Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rocks Fall, your home for the best reviews, creator interviews, and actual play in the podcasting world. This week, I had the distinct pleasure of sitting down with Michael and Stephen Stagliano. They're founders of Stesso Games. They have 4 titles, games and RPGs under their belt. But specifically, I wanted to talk today about their amazing, critically acclaimed podcast, the Tavern of Heroes, where they play a system that they have built themselves. So we're going to get right to the interview. But first, a short message about how you, listener, yes, you right there, can contribute to the show. Would you like to hear your tabletop product or RPG reviewed on this show? Reach out and get in contact. We're always looking for input from creators. Send any material you'd like us to consider reviewing to Rocks Fall, care of Devon Truby, P.O. Box 61162, Reno, Nevada 89506. And, like what you hear, leave us a review wherever you found the show, and feel free to reach out on social media and through email. We can be found at RocksFallCast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you had any PDFs you wanted us to look over for potential review, hit us up at rocksfallpod@gmail.com. Again, that is rocksfallpod@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and enjoy the interview, everyone. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rocks Fall. Today we have some super special guests from the Tavern of Heroes podcast, Michael and Stephen Stagliano. They're founders of Stesso Games, and Tavern of Heroes is their 4th title from that game company, and they're here to chat about what's going on with them today. So how's it going, guys?
Woo! Woo! It's going great, man. Thanks for having us on, Devon. We're super stoked to be here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate any you coming on and working with me on this stuff. It's very cool. So, do you want to tell the listeners kind of what Tavern of Heroes is all about?
Yeah, that's like exactly what we want to do. So, Tavern of Heroes, it's kind of a 2-part answer. First, it is a brand new game system that is essentially a boiled down, modified tabletop RPG system. So I feel like most or all are D20 systems, and we just have a different system that we created for our game. And then part 2 of the answer is that we made an actual play podcast that is a little bit more like a radio drama than a true actual play, because we record the adventures that Steve and I write with a cast of voiceover actors, and then we edit. In post-production, we add scoring and sound effects. So, you know what I mean? So it plays a little bit more like I've listened to some actual plays that are, they are actual plays, baby. It's like, yeah. It's 4 hours long, and there's no editing, and it's all the banter and stuff. And we have a little bit of banter, but we kind of stick to pretty tight to the story, and try to tell procedural adventure stories.
Very cool. Very cool. So I did want to dive in a little more about, because this is a really interesting concept for me. It's not just an actual play podcast. You guys are playing a game that you created. So what was the inspiration for making the game itself?
Yeah, great question. I feel the need to just kind of, say or at least talk about our mission statement was that we really want to bring people to the table, at least the tabletop RPG table, for the first time. And Michael and I found when we did dive into D&D and more recently Pathfinder, as much as we absolutely love those systems, we found that they have a really high barrier to entry. To step that out with like an actual example, if we would ask our friends and family who would traditionally play board games with us for game nights, if we asked them to play D&D or asked them to play Pathfinder, it was just like a hard no and a hard pass. And I think rightfully so, because of 2 things. One, I think just back in the days of Gary Gygax, there's just that stigma that's been carried through the decades here of just that it's like the nerdiest thing that a nerd could do. So
absolutely.
Because of that, people want to stay away from it. And then the second facet being that, those systems come with 300 to 400 page rule books. So even if you get somebody to say yes, then it's okay. Well, here's the core rule book. I'll see it about a month and a half. Go ahead and read up, and then we'll spend 3 weeks rolling up a character. So just really high barrier to entries that were really frustrating for Michael and I, because I'm sure we'll talk about this in a bit, but we've been gamers our entire lives, playing through all types of systems, PCs, consoles, and obviously board games. And our favorite type of gaming is tabletop RPGs, but we just didn't feel like there was any system out there that could really cater to people that have never played before. So that was to answer your question, or hit the nail on the head. Our inspiration was we just sat down and when we first started iterating or strategically thinking about what we wanted to make, we said, what is it possible to make a true sit and play RPG, or take a system that's really, really, really boiled down and really friendly to new players?
Are you guys, are you marketing it towards like an intro to like a kind of like a gateway game to other games, or?
You said it exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely, and Steve had a little preface here, and I want to restate it. It's not that we don't love Pathfinder and D&D. We are fully obsessed with those games. We love them so much, but we do think there's a need for a gateway drug. And
absolutely.
That's exactly what Tavern of Heroes is. And it even comes down to the experience of playing the game. Like those games require like 4, and I mean, I even know of like 8-hour sessions, right? Where like you get a group of 4 or 5 players, and it's serialized storytelling, so you tell the same adventure over. Like, we played a Pathfinder campaign for like 3 years, and that's just a big commitment. And so our adventures are like, our longest one is probably 2 hours and 15 minutes, and most of them are like 90-minute adventures that you can sit down, read through. You don't even have to read through, and you can just play. So in terms of a true gateway game and experience, it's like, it feels crazy that doesn't exist. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. There are definitely other RPG systems, tabletop RPG systems, but that's what we're striving to do, is bring to market something that is very easy for new people to play.
I think it's definitely something that's needed. I mean, coming from the historical standpoint, Gygax was very rules oriented. He liked his systems very crunchy.
Yeah. I just read his that book. It's called Empire of Imagination. Have you heard of that, Devon?
Oh, it was great. I just wrapped it up a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I read it a couple of weeks ago too. Yeah, and so you're totally right. Yeah, he was like a super, rules heavy, which again, I feel like I need to restate it again. Like we love it. Like, oh my God, I love reading a rule book. We love sitting down like in the game and like stopping the story and talking about rules. But as a true experience for creating a game, we wanted to shy away from that. And like, how do you tell these really great stories where the rules don't get in the way,
Yeah, well, I think that's the core of it, is the story. And I think that's always been what it is for me. And like, I'm a massive nerd for this stuff. One of my last episodes was the City of Mist core rulebook, which I sat down and read a 500-page core book for fun. But I think it really boils down to the experience and the story, which, for me, that's why I switched from playing any other D&D to like 5th edition, because it's very
we only play 5e now.
It's rules light compared to the original, and it's definitely not what Gygax would have wanted if everything reported can be believed, considering he came from like the hardcore chainmail tabletop military games and stuff like that.
I know, yeah. It was really cool reading that in the book. I didn't know that history, that's kind of how he got started, was the heavy military game.
Yeah, but I think what you guys are up to is very cool, and it gets more to it gets more to the point for what I like to play games for, and that's the story and being with your friends and having fun.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to be even more specific. Steve and I had this realization we started creating the system for the game last summer, so actually over a year ago now, and we just had this epiphany like a month ago, and I love kind of branding our game this way. Really, what Tavern of Heroes is, it's like the video game version of D&D or Pathfinder, in that it's just like it's kind of a hack and slash, right? Like
yeah.
you get in within 4 minutes of sitting down to play. You're presented with a problem. You kind of know who and where the bad guys are, and you got to go beat them up and like solve kind of solve the mystery. And then the second thing there is, I'm going to use 5e as an example. I just played in a one-off 5e. I played a cleric, and her character sheet, her spell list was 19 pages long, and it was like so validating for me to have that experience playing and then applied to Tavern of Heroes, because our spell cast, first of all of our hero sheets it's just one page, and it's very simplified and boiled down. You have 3 abilities and an ultimate, and then our spell casters that are heroes have 1 page of spells, which are typically 5 to 7. So you know what I mean, like framing it in the context of like a video game, what that's like to play. It's like the perfect analogy, because you kind of get in, you get out, you tell this adventure story. There's a little bit of role playing, like we really encourage people to maybe not, you don't have to do a voice or something, but like describe in the story what you want to do. Like if you're going to kill this bad guy, tell us how you do it. Like, do you hit him with your sword, or are you casting a spell, depending on the hero? So anyway, I feel like that's really important to specify too. Like it really does come down to the experience of what it's like to play Tavern of Heroes.
Yeah, and I think the perfect example of what you're talking about, if we want to bring it back to your guys' podcast, is the episode where Morty's introduced with the fight with the dragons.
Yeah.
Because that was great. I mean, you guys jumped into the story. You took someone who was fairly new to the game, if not completely new to the game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, never played.
And got him to slay some dragons within like 20 minutes. It was great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's such a great example episode, Devon. If you remember, I was we say story master but the GM for probably anybody else that's listening. And I had that moment in, I think at one point I said, like, there's nothing more in Tavern of Heroes than getting to fight it. 2 heroes going up and getting to fight a dragon. And what I was really saying there is because in a traditional D&D or Pathfinder campaign, you probably don't get to face a dragon until you're level 8. Yeah, right?
You face rats and goblins, right? 1d4 plus 1.
Right.
Yeah, and you have
AC
is 14.
Just the fact that, to your point, someone who had never played before, and I should also say would never play a tabletop RPG before. Graham was like the coolest cat out there. In the traditional sense, like he's not a nerd. Yeah, the fact that he was able to sit down and within 45 minutes battle against 2, spoiler alert, 3 dragons was really fun. Actually, it's a good caveat too. Our entire cast except for one person not only has never played a tabletop RPG, they're also not gamers. Like they do not identify, some of them play like Candy Crush and stuff, but they don't identify as gamers. And so it was so validating after all of our session ones with those people who recorded 2 episodes, who recorded 1 adventure, down to the person, every one of them was like, hey, I'm not just saying this, like, when can we play again? Like this was, it was so fun. Like, and it's just so great to see that, because Steve and I, like, we actually believe that. We're so passionate about.
They don't get it, Devon. They don't understand.
They're watching Game of Thrones. They're watching Stranger Things and seeing kids play D&D. Like, it's in there. You know what I'm saying? There isn't a system, I think, that really brings them to the table for the first time. So that's absolutely what we're pushing.
Got you. Yeah, and that was another topic I wanted to touch on, is that all of the people on your show so far, that from what I've listened, have all said they've never played before, which I think is fantastic, because it's not only spreading the joy of the game, but it's getting new people introduced to the system and breaking down those stigmas of, because I think there's still something to be said about some holdover from like the satanic panic in the 80s and all that weird stuff that happened with the game, and like you said, the barrier for entry is so crazy that something like this is needed. And I haven't ever seen a system like this before. And I'm, obviously somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen systems that are extremely rules light. You have Fate, you have Dungeon World, anything powered by the apocalypse, things like that. They're all pretty rules light. However, the Dungeon World book is still 300 pages long, and I'm a super huge fan of what you guys have got going on.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah. And you know what? We looked really hard at both Dungeon World and Fate as well. And again, also really a big fan of those systems, but we feel like it didn't it didn't get all the way there. It didn't drastically lower the barrier to entry for new people. There's a specific design choice I want to speak to as it applies to this stuff, and it's like one of my favorite things to talk about in terms of the specific choices for our system. So first, it comes with a story. So we played Pathfinder for 3 years, as I mentioned. One of the players in our game was our dad, and our dad was he a warrior or a fighter? A fighter. Yeah. And Zakos was his character's name. And God love him. My dad's 60. He's, not someone that is going to be great for a tabletop RPG. Creative, yeah. But the amount of times that my dad would have a successful hit and need to roll damage, and his character rolled 1d10 points of damage for his bastard sword, and my dad would pick up a 1d8. The amount of times that happened, Devon, in 3 years is like 600 times, like multiple times a session. And so it put us in this frame of thinking, again, from a design choice, simply putting someone who's never played a tabletop RPG in front of 7 polyhedral dice. They're like, what the hell are all of these things? Like, they don't understand. It's so, just that alone is so hard to look down at and think like
D6.
Yeah, everyone knows a D6, right, obviously. But even, honestly, Devon, even a D20, it's like, okay, my AC, or like I need to beat someone's AC, which is 17, and I add like 6, but that would be more than 20. Like, it's so hard to grasp. So conceptually, we took a step back from that, and that's why it's a little confusing on the show. But it's a percentage die. We say percentage, but it's really it's a D10 system basically. So the percentage die, the true die, has increments of 10 from all the way from 10 to 100, and being able to say to someone, it's a DC 80. You need to roll your percentage die. Those combination of sentences, like you can immediately understand, like, oh, okay, so like I basically have a 20% chance of succeeding before my bonuses. You know what I mean? Like, that little design choice alone, and shedding the 7 polyhedral dice and shedding the D20, like that was something actually for a long time, for months. Tavern of Heroes was a D20 system, and then we just felt like, no, we got to be a little more innovative than this and make it truly, easy to play for everyone. Like the first time I ever played it, Devon, was with I have nephews, and they're 8 and 10, and they played a bunch of like mobile games and everything, and I literally, like I said, I didn't explain anything. I didn't have them read the player's guide, which is on 7 pages, none of that. I just sat them down, I handed them a hero sheet, I handed them a D6 and a percentage die, and I was like, hey, we're gonna start telling a story. Here's what you guys can do. I went over their hero sheets a little bit, and I'll tell you when to roll. And they played, and we basically, every time I go home and see them, we play now. So yeah, it's truly catered towards just very, very new players. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, and you bring up a good point there with the different dice array. Have you listened to The Adventure Zone?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, yeah.
So like they, at one point, so the Adventure Zone is an actual play podcast from the McElroy family, and they at one point,
their dad plays too.
Yeah, their dad plays, and he's just about the same age as you're explaining your dad is as well.
Yep.
And at one point, one of them got him a dice caddy that labeled all the dice, so he would put it in. It was like it's just a slot for each one of the dice, so he'd stop grabbing like a D10 for a D20, because if you're not if you're not fluent,
I didn't get to that episode. That's awesome.
Yeah, if you're not fluent in the dice, then I mean there isn't really that big of a distinction between like a D10, 12, and 20.
Right.
So I mean you're likely to grab any of them,
And again, for the record, Michael and I nerd out on dice. I think we each have, a minimum of 10 individual sets alone. But for the purposes of the game and the game design, we stripped it down to just the 2.
Yeah, in my office, in my studio, I'm staring at a bag that is modeled after a mimic that has about 30 sets of dice in it. So I love dice.
Go. You know what's great about buying dice is like you can buy. For some reason I like got a big old crush on D6s. Like that's what D20s are cool, but I loved collecting D6s. And you can collect dice and spend 10 cents on a D6. Right. Like I love that. Yeah. So you don't feel inexpensive. Yeah, it's not an expensive collectible. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of going to conventions, because they don't typically give out D20s. They give out D6s, and I've got about 15 D6s from various conventions and stuff. But they're all very cool. Yeah, actually, my hometown they're 5 years deep into an annual gaming convention, which is really cool. It's called RAGEcon.
That's a great name. What type of gaming? Is it like a little open gaming, or is it board and tabletop RPGs?
Board and tabletop. It's really cool. Yeah, they try to be as inclusive as possible with to get as many people in there.
When is it? We'll drive out to that. Yeah. We're in close. Burbank.
Oh, nice. It is. They actually just set their date, so I will edit down me searching.
Yeah, let us know.
Cool. Yeah, send it over.
I'll edit down me searching for this, but. RAGEcon 6. It is June 21st through 23rd here in Reno.
Cool. Of next year, obviously.
Of next year, yeah. So what is your history with, you touched on it a little bit. You said you're lifelong gamers and all that stuff. But do you remember getting into games at all? Or have you always has that been just part of what you do?
Yeah, good question. I think for no particular reason, we just started out board gaming when we were 4 and 5 with the typical family games like Life or Candyland or whatever. We even recall our mom just let us win all the time, but we thought we were really good, which I'm sure was a force multiplier when it came to things we were interested in. Then jumped right into NES and Sega and hit console games pretty hard. We would still do board games, but nothing crazy. Then we started. I'm pretty sure our first PC game outside of Myst and Riven and Command and Conquer and all those was World of Warcraft that we just lost our minds and played pretty hard. Also around the same time, we first got introduced to D&D. We always wasn't it 3rd or 3.5?
3.5.
Yeah, in our freshman year of college. Liked it, dabbled, did some one-offs on different campaigns and stuff. So I'm painting two narratives here. One, the console narrative of playing through Halo and God of War and all of those. We were also touching on D&D, and then after World of Warcraft, we started playing Pathfinder in terms of a tabletop RPG. I've been playing that for I think 8 years now. Like Michael said, we mentioned earlier, we ran an adventure path for 3 years, and then. As far as other games, the biggest game that I play now is League of Legends, and I also happen to work at Riot Games, but I played long before I worked there. And then Mike and I play a lot of mobile games too recently. Yeah, and I think the other thing you're missing, this is Michael now, is back in 2010 is when I want to say, the true board game revolution happened. Yeah, sure. And we got swept up in that for sure. With Ticket to Ride and Settlers of Catan and Dominion and Small World. Yeah. I mean, that's where Pirates Cove. Yeah, that got us back into board gaming. And around that same time is when Steve and I started to design board games as well, like you mentioned in the intro. So Tavern of Heroes is actually our 4th title. It's our first go at a tabletop RPG system. And then we have 2 other board games and 1 other card game under our gaming company, Stesso Games.
Awesome. So I've always been in with console video games and D&D and stuff. I also started with 3.5 when I was in middle school.
Nice.
And I have yet to really jump on the board game bandwagon. So for those, I'm trying. I've got a giant box full of I'm Rising Sun is on my list to play.
Oh baby, I'm sorry, I haven't played it yet, but I want to play that very badly.
It's very cool. These I kind of don't want to touch it because the miniatures that are included in this box are just pieces of artwork. They're gorgeous.
Yeah. Hey Devon, I'm curious why you haven't jumped on, and there's plenty of very good answers. I'm not saying this skeptically.
Oh, no,
what's wrong with you? But I'm just curious why. Why you haven't jumped into board games?
I'm not really sure. I've got an issue with things that seem too linear for me.
Oh, huh. Yeah.
So, that might be it. I have no idea though. But there's so many, like you said, there's this big board game renaissance now. I mean, Gloomhaven has.
Oh my god! Just I for the first time, we don't have it. We have 2 kids under 2. I can't. But for the first time, I got to pick up and hold that box.
Yeah,
it's 80 pounds.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I can't. There's no way I could justify spending that much money on a board game myself either.
Yeah, totally.
But I saw at the last convention I was at, which was actually RAGEcon here in Reno. They had just pallets and pallets full of them, and they were just, I mean, they're basically, these things are as big as my desk, these boxes are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, so that's one I'd like to get into. But I think with the rise of like more open, non-linear games like Rising Sun and Gloomhaven and all that stuff, I mean, I think what's it? Come On Games. They're the producers of Rising Sun and a whole bunch of other games. They do pretty non-linear. Like there's a Viking game they make called Bloody Rage. It seems really cool.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So I mean, I'd like to try that, but I think it's just me. I mean, once I get into it, I'm sure it's just going to become a new obsession. But I think I need to find the right thing.
I think I missed this, Devon. So you're more of a PC console, or do you do tabletop RPGs as well? Obviously, right?
Yeah. So I not quite into the PC, mostly console, and then I've always been into the tabletop games. In my office here, I have probably 150 books on my shelf.
Holy cow!
And that's
great.
That's just what's on display. So
you're a DM, obviously, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
And you run a 5e?
Yeah, I'm currently running 2 5e games, but I've got plans for a City of Mist game and a Seventh Seas game and a Starfinder game. But so it's
nice.
Lots of stuff going on as far as that goes.
And do you do homebrew stuff? Do you write your own adventures, or do you do all, buy the books and stick to a book?
Oh no, I do. I started off that way when I was doing 3.5, but I do everything myself. Like I haven't published anything or anything like that, but I've got this whole multi-game, multiverse thing going on with this giant combined world that I've made.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it combines like one of the branches the story goes is used through the Fate system. One system is used through Starfinder, or one arc is through Starfinder. One is through 5e. So I've got big plans for it. I need to figure out the technical aspects of kind of gathering it all together to publish it. But
hey, and this always makes me curious, and not to pull it right back to Tavern of Heroes, but it's one of the things we talked about so often in throughout our design process was, how do you do maps? Like, do you just have oh my god, I forget what's the fold out board, the
flip mats?
The flip mats. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. Do you just do flip mats and like draw with marker, or how do you do them?
So I've got a couple of giant hex maps, flip maps, things like that. But I have so much stuff I can repurpose. Like a lot of that's one of the things that I think is kind of a shame with the newer stuff is a lot of for tabletop games is a lot of them don't come with like maps and supplementary materials and stuff like that. Right. So if you look back into the late 80s, early 90s of D&D, every additional supplement came in this cardboard box, and the box would have maps and supplements and charts and all sorts of stuff along with the source book for that supplement.
I honestly did not know that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
They're astounding, and these maps are all full color and they're beautiful. So I mean, I can just like pull one of those guys out and repurpose it for something I want to do. Cool. But I also and these maps are like the size of tables. They're massive maps. They're not tiny things.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
that's actually that's one. Just to do a quick segue, that's one of the things we did with Tavern of Heroes. We use a program called Dungeon Painter Studio. I don't know if you've heard it, but it is amazing. And so all of our adventures, we did the heavy lifting, and it comes with the maps basically that you just need that'll
just an appendix there.
Yeah, that like with the box set, it'll just be in the back, so you don't need to print out or draw maps, which is again just a barrier entry thing. Like even for people that want to be a DM, it's like, okay, I guess I gotta buy paper and draw maps, which it can be really hard. I
also I invest a lot in graph paper. I think I might be single-handedly holding up the graph paper market.
Hey, have you heard of this company called Architects of Destruction yet? Have you heard of what they're doing?
No.
They have, and I've played on it. It's 3D terrain, like fully customizable 3D terrain. That's pretty cheap. I think they do 3D printing. Actually, I'm sorry, I don't know the price point, but
gotcha.
I played, and this one off I did with the 5e guy, this guy named Matt, his Instagram handle is the Pickled Dragon, and he had 3D terrain for us. It was like, it really did make, it was just so much more immersive and really cool. And like, there were like, obviously there's no ceiling, but all the rooms have walls and actual, we played in like a ruin. So there were like skulls drawn or etched into the walls. It was pretty amazing.
That's amazing. And so did you go somewhere to see Matt, or is Matt local to you guys as well?
No, Matt, he just moved to New Orleans, and he was out here in LA for this event that Joe, what's his last name? Maggiano, something.
Yeah, he was in Joe Manganiello's basement. Yeah.
There you go. Oh my gosh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he ran me and a buddy through just one of his homebrew 5e adventures, and we played for like 4 hours just in this gaming store out here in Burbank. And the guys at Architects of Destruction sent him like their prototype, and he told me he was going to bring it, and mostly because I couldn't conceptually, like, I just didn't understand what that would look like or how that would work. And then he put it on the table, man, and it was I really hope that they blow up and that it takes over the tabletop RPG landscape, because it's so much. It's just really, really fun.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who I'll definitely take a look at them. It sounds like they're doing it. If they can make that affordable, that would be astounding. Because I know I'm a huge fan of Dwarven Forge.
Oh, of course. Oh my God, their stuff is awesome.
Right?
It's super expensive.
But I don't have. I mean, more power to them, because they have tons and tons of followers. They're raking in a lot of cash on this, but they're from the more high end established gamer community and stuff like that. And I unfortunately don't have several $1,000s to sink into a terrain setting, but I'd really love to get into it at some point, and it would save me from having to hand draw all my maps that I can't
it's a lot of
my
time.
stuff for.
Devon, did you ever get into 40K or Warhammer?
No, that's another one that I'm going to hopefully in the future get into. There's actually a Warhammer store in town here. So I mean,
I gotta be honest, it's like first of all, I can't walk past a Warhammer, a 40K table, and not stop and look at like all the minis and ask a bunch of questions. And it always, I remember like years ago thinking, man, like I wish, our Pathfinder campaign or our D&D setting could be on that type of terrain. Like, and they have, like fallen structures and trees and like huge buildings, and it's like amazing. Like it just seems so cool. And obviously, you need hexes or squares to denote 5 feet or whatever. But yeah, like that can totally be done. That's what Architects of Destruction do really well. Like each little square that you put down is marked with squares and hexes and stuff.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. So, I mean, everybody who's listening, go check them out, because that sounds awesome. I'm going to go check them out myself.
Yeah, they're going to sponsor in September. They're sponsoring one of the episodes of Tavern of Heroes. They're actually going to do a giveaway for our listeners, which is so. We always say this for so. As much as we do our giveaways, half the time I'm like, I mean, we should just make up a fake person and then just it's so cool. We don't actually do that, but we do talk about it.
I get you. Yeah, I'm working on compiling some stuff for giveaways as well for this show, and I'm looking at this stuff like thinking like, well, I could probably use this at some point. It can just go back into my collection in the garage somewhere.
Right.
Oh, geez. So what's next for Tavern of Heroes?
Yeah, really good question. I think we're looking to launch a Patreon here. I'm not sure when this episode will release, but a Patreon. But more importantly than that, that's just to fund things like expansions of the show, just different storytelling modes that we want to do, mostly around long form, and release like an 8 to 10 episode adventure. And then from the game design perspective, we really want to put a beta out of the game. We've had hundreds of emails come in asking for fans asking where they can buy the game, and we desperately want to get it to them. But as you well know, that takes money, because we need to hire an artist and graphic designer. Right now, we just play an alpha version on the show that suits us just fine. But yeah, those are the two big things that we want to do: release more content, and then release a beta version so our fans can play test.
And I just want to make sure that that's not confusing. It's the Patreon will be for the show, for the podcast Tavern of Heroes, and then we'll actually do a Kickstarter, hopefully next year in 2019, kind of once we have all of our ducks in a row and have play tested enough. And basically have made sure that our rule system is bulletproof. Then we'll do a Kickstarter for like the actual box set, to publish the game, and it'll come with dice and minis, and at least that's the plan. We need to kind of build a business model around it, but that's the idea.
Right on. Well, I definitely look forward to seeing that stuff come out, and maybe I could have you guys back on when it launches.
Yeah, my God, obviously we would just love that, and we still have some, like Steve mentioned, we're basically playing on a prototype, so by the time that we get to actual publication, yeah, it'll be really exciting to see how and if and the game system has evolved.
Right on. Well, in the meantime, where can listeners find you?
So our Instagram handle is Tavern of Heroes Podcast. It's a great way to kind of get additional content. We always post maps and pretty cool artwork. Steve handles it and does a really good job. And then the actual podcast, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, obviously iTunes, but then Stitcher and Audio Boom and SoundCloud and Google Play. It's just Tavern of Heroes Podcast. Tavern of Heroes is the name of the show. And then you can email us at mnightbringer@gmail.com. And to avoid some confusion, the guy that runs the Tavern of Heroes, his name is Valar Nightbringer, and he requested that he be handle all the emails. So so it's his email, mnightbringer@gmail.com. And then lastly, our website is tavernofheroes.com. And the big thing, the reason to go to the website, you're not even going to believe this when I say this. So the world that we play the game in is called Eldaron. And on our website, there is a fully interactive map that you can go to and basically like click on any geographical identifier or city or whatever and get like a whole history of that place. Like a paragraph of text, which is pretty cool. And then there's cast bios and headshots and episodes and all that stuff. But that's kind of all of our...
That's everything.
That's everything.
That's awesome. Well, I will link everything in the description notes for this show. But thank you guys so much for coming on.
Yeah, Devon, it was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
All right. Well, I will... thanks for coming on the show. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, sounds good. We'll be in touch.